Okay, well, good afternoon. Welcome to week 2 of the Resume Cafe for Winter Boot Camp and our panel on what employers are looking for in a resume. And we are so excited to have you students here and to have such a prestigious and well-rounded group of panelists this afternoon. So thank you for being here. I know it's a busy time of year, so thank you. I'd like to start off by just, if you wouldn't mind, introducing yourself to the students and what you do, maybe one thing you love about your job, and then I'll go into some advice for resumes. But Carolyn, you're first to the right of me, so would you mind introducing yourself to our students?
This always happens. Anytime I'm on a panel, I'm always the first person to go. But hello, everybody. My name is Carolyn Messick, and I am the Human Resources Manager for the Kansas City Chiefs. So as you guys can imagine, it's a super busy time for us and myself. So we're very excited. And I think my favorite thing about my job, aside from being a world champion and having a Super Bowl ring, is just having the opportunity to connect with so many different people throughout my career. So it's been a wonderful journey so far, and I look forward to many more years.
And you're KU graduate as well?
Yes, I am. Rock Chalk Journalism School.
And what journalism school? That's right, Strategic Communications.
Yep.
Excellent. Yep. Okay, Mark.
Got it. Sorry about that. Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Lafon. I am currently the owner of Leading Edge Consulting, LLC, and I am currently doing some teaching and consulting primarily on a part-time basis, particularly this last year during the COVID. Prior to doing that, I have worked with a number of companies in HR leadership positions in a variety of different industries, primarily in manufacturing and supply chain management, from book publishing, pharmaceutical, auto manufacturing. And so I am a true generalist in an HR capacity. And over the years, I've had the opportunity to do a lot of recruiting and reviewing resumes, and definitely have some opinions on what I like to see and what I don't like to see. I'd say what I like about my current job now is flexibility. Now that I am working for myself, I definitely like the flexibility and being able to spend more time at home and with family, and can be a little bit more particular about the type of opportunities that I select, including being able to do some work with KU. And I also am a KU graduate. I graduated long enough ago to where they actually had a degree called personnel administration. And so I remember at the time, I didn't know for sure if I would be using my degree or not, like a lot of students do. But lo and behold, it's served me pretty well the last 40 years of my career. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Last but not least, Brian.
Well, howdy, crew. My name is Brian Roderman. I'm the President and Chief Innovation Officer for Into Innovation. Into Innovation is a firm I started 15 years ago, and I'm happy to say that we're an experience innovation design agency, and we get an opportunity to create all kinds of new experiences, both digital and physical, for a whole host of clients, both small and large. I've been in the consulting business, design and innovation consulting now for over 33 years, I guess, marking just crossed over to the 33rd year. Happy to hang out with all you Rock Chalk Jayhawkers. I also graduated from KU in '92 with my degree in industrial design. And like I said, I've been practicing doing consulting pretty much the entire time. And so it's been a great career. I've had a lot of fun working with a lot of wonderful people, a lot of wonderful brands throughout the years. One thing I love about my job is that you always get to stay in the play. As I mentioned, I'm currently calling you from a hotel lobby in San Antonio, where this morning I got to go to hang out with actual users and of a product we're actually working on right now, and actually doing ethnographic work here in San Antonio. And I'm on my way to Tampa to do it for the remainder of the week. So as we talk about living the dream, right? Running a consultancy, but also having the opportunity to still stay in the heavy lifting part of the organization has been very important to me throughout. And Mark, real pleasure to be, and Carolyn, both a pleasure to be on the panel with you. And obviously, Carolyn, go Chiefs! How exciting! What an exciting!
I think it's ironic that you have work in Tampa.
Yeah.
I packed my Chiefs jersey. It's in my suitcase, and I will be wearing it proudly in Tampa Bay.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you so much. This is going to be a great panel. Students, please ask all your questions. This is the perfect time to do it. But I want to start off by just asking, what is your, give us your advice for a resume. What do you like to see when you look at a resume from students, when you're looking to hire someone? And anyone, it doesn't matter. I can, just whoever would like to go first.
I'll jump in there. One size does not fit all is one of the best advices I can give somebody. And so what I mean by that is you should really give thought and take the time and do what you can to design that resume to the specific opportunity that you're pursuing. And that's assuming that there's a specific opening or job that you have an interest in, as opposed to maybe just a blind resume to an organization that you want to be a part of that maybe doesn't necessarily have a job. So when there's a specific opening, a specific job, my advice is always take the time, read the description, the posting itself. If there's a job description, make sure that you review that closely. Make the decision. If you're, be honest with yourself and make the decision. Go through the process to ask yourself, am I qualified for this? Do I meet the requirements? I'm not a believer in that you should just throw out, 100 different resumes and hope something sticks. It should be something that you truly are interested in, that you're qualified for, and then take the time to look at what is involved, what's required, and then make the needed adjustments in your resume before you send that off.
I would 100% agree with you, Mark. I think I was actually just talking to my team before I jumped on this call, and that was something I asked them was, I'm doing a panel today for resumes, and that's our favorite topic. We see a lot of resumes that come through, especially for the seasonal program that we have, which is basically our internship program. And I think the best thing that kind of what you said, Mark, was basically just tailoring your resume to that specific job. I think a lot of times it's easy just to submit a resume that you've created and you have saved, which is great. I have a resume that I have just on hand, but I always update it. I'm constantly updating it because my job is ever changing. So anytime I do something new, or I have a new experience or a new responsibility, I always have that handy so I can update it. I'm not going anywhere, but it's good to just have that available if and when I do need it. And, the job description plays a huge factor in a resume for me, at least, because I know what I've posted, the job description is available to candidates. So the biggest thing is actually reading that job description and utilizing those words and the phrases and building your resume to show a hiring manager that you are capable and you should be considered for this job. So well said, Mark.
I'll add in there, crew, that one of my favorite design rules is the simple complex rule, right? And it's simple to make something complex, but it's complex to make something simple. And your resume shouldn't be any different. Your resume is one of the best products you can create that represents you as a brand. And it's very important that you really take the time to make sure that you've said what you want to say about yourself and how you want to say about yourself, because that simplicity, if designed correctly, will be recognized. If you leave the complexity in your resume for us to have to decipher it and extract from it, we'll move on very quickly. It'll get set aside and we'll go to the next one. So you really have to think about how you want to design that so that us as the receiver of that information go, wow, no, this just makes sense. I'm absorbed into it. I'm beginning to take in a pause and going, I need to stop and pay more attention to what I'm seeing here, because this one really stands out just in its clarity alone. And I think all of us have seen enough resumes. There's the BS factor, right? That just you say, look, don't try to dazzle me with shiny. I can see through it, from a far distance. So I'm going to be able to pick that out pretty quickly. So don't think that you're going to try and get one over on us too quickly, because we're going to be able to call it out. And remember, on our end too, we may be receiving tens or hundreds or even thousands for a posting that shows up, depending on, again, the size of the firm or company or organization. And so there's a lot of people looking through a lot of information very quickly. And we want to make sure that, you can get recognized and really get pulled out of the stack and put in the short stack. That's where you want to be.
And also, if I may jump off that I think that as silly as it sounds, and I'm sure that you guys have all heard this 1,000 times, a resume is sometimes your first impression that we get of you as a candidate, and it's kind of your one shot, like your one chance, and you have to do whatever it takes to get your resume to stick out in a better way versus maybe in the short list is where you want to be. So definitely keep that in mind. I know that sounds kind of silly, but a first impression is honestly a lasting impression. And I think that can be applied especially to your resumes and cover letters.
I want to follow up with what I have 2 follow-up questions. One, Brian, you mentioned that you need to be able to communicate your brand on a resume. And let's not put in the shiny things, we can see right through it. Can any of you give an example of what those shiny things are? What drives you nuts? What do you see as, that's not helpful at all? That is what you used as baloney. So can you give us a few examples of what my students shouldn't do?
Carolyn, do you want to take that, or I can?
I'm sure we both have things to say, so you can go first.
Okay. Well, certainly the first thing is that you're not trying to overinflate the things that don't need to be overinflated. Some people are trying to pack in too much. If it was a summer job, right, then it's okay to acknowledge that. Don't try to make it more than it is. Be honest, be transparent, because that's what you're going to want from us in return. Then there's, we're talking more about the content. There's obviously then the visual of it as well. Now the visual is interesting because in the past few years, there's I know when I built my first resume, I was very obsessed over the graphic design of it, and spent a lot of time on it from a true design perspective, just from a layout, font choices, all that. In today's world, it's kind of shifted a little bit, because now a lot of them are submitted electronically, and some of them get just kind of texified or turned into just more plain text. And so you sometimes lose that opportunity to have the graphic element associated with your resume, which used to be able to be, showcase some of your skills, maybe from a visual standpoint. There are, if it is going to get submitted in a text-based way, there are still ways that we can make sure through links or associations or to websites or PDFs or what have you, you still have the opportunity to showcase your graphic skills if that's one of the things that you possess. So those things still matter. I'm not saying they need to go away, but I definitely think that, there's that fine line between the content and just the clarity of the content, and then the process or the layout and the association to just the design of the resume overall.
So the design, when you're wanting to showcase your design, you shouldn't do it through the look of your resume, is what you're saying.
Well,
that for
it can, it certainly can. If it also depends on how you're handing it off. If we're still in a one-on-one situation, which is hard to come by in the pandemic world. But if you are sitting across from me, I am expecting you to hand me a resume that's well designed and has well thought out graphic layout features. Especially if you're coming at to me from a design job, it better be spot on. It also better match your brand. It better match your portfolio. It better match your website. All those things should matter. Still, they do. All I'm saying is that in this case, there's this added element now that we see if things are submitted maybe through LinkedIn or through other social sites, it may come to us in more of a text form than it will be coming to us in a graphical, say a PDF or some other document.
Awesome.
But
I think,
when
Mark, you have done a lot with the corporate type finance, business type positions. What do you see?
Sure. To me, the shiny thing would be the content. It's being honest about what your responsibilities were, not over inflating your achievement. Don't say that you were in charge of something if you were actually a team member and played a part in a final outcome. And which then leads me into any opportunity you have to where you talk about your ability or your experience in working as part of a team. That to a lot of organizations is more important and more powerful than examples of things that you maybe achieved on your own, because being able to work with other people, being able to collaborate, is becoming more and more important to organizations all the time. And you should look at finding the opportunity, assuming that you've had that opportunity, to make sure that you are able to highlight that and bring that to the attention of your future employer.
And Mark, if I can build on that real quick, I'm glad you called out that sometimes we don't see enough of that people recognize that team projects are something that they can put on their resume. They think it has to be more like a particular job. Yeah. But Mark, you're absolutely right. One of the number one things we're looking for in people are can we get along, right? Can they associate with others on the team? Are they a good family fit? And those are things that you can get very quickly from understanding team roles or team projects. So those are definitely things you can highlight. If you don't have a lot of job or defined work experience, it's a good place to go.
Absolutely.
It sounds like you are looking for on a resume not duties or tasks, but what we call soft skills or transferable skills. That you'd like to see a lot of that on a resume versus particular tasks that you may have done or accomplished on your own, but to think about what are the soft skills that our employers are looking for. And you said teamwork. Are there any others that you might suggest that would be helpful to have on their resume?
I'm going to jump in kind of back on the last question just real quick. I think that I think objectives are great on resumes. Actually, I'm kind of honestly just very indifferent on them. But if you're going to put an objective there of your resume, it is so important to really actually write an objective that you can apply to the job that you're applying to, not just saying, I would like to find a job that suits my skills. That tells me nothing. And to be quite frank, I probably wouldn't continue to read the resume just because that's great, but what are your skills? I need to see that up front. So if you're going to use the objective, again, it's great. Then you really need to actually put an objective there that will help me understand who you are as a person, because I just have a piece of paper. So just wanted to piggyback off that.
What is your feeling about about having an objective statement or what we call summary of qualifications? I think a lot of students come to our office with a summary of qualifications. When is that helpful for you as an employer, potential employer, hiring someone?
For me, it's pretty critical because it's really the first thing that I'm going to look at. Whatever is in the top box, if you will, of that resume, I'm probably looking at that more than I am their name, address, email address. That's, what are they interested in, or what is it that's unique about them? What's their objective? What's the summary of their experience? That's where my eyes are at. And depending on what I see there, depends on how much time or if my eyes go any further from that. So in my viewpoint, it's critical that you as Carolyn said, be succinct and do a really good job of defining that, so that the employer knows if it's going to be worth their time to spend looking further at the document.
What about students who don't have a lot of experience, that maybe they don't feel like they can put a well-rounded summary of qualifications? What do you say to students that maybe are a little hesitant to do that?
Well, I'm gonna state, like, again, and from a design agency standpoint, one thing that obviously we're going to go looking for first and foremost is, did you have any internships? Did you have any work projects outside of school? That's gonna rise to the top. That's going to be one of the first markers we're looking for. Now, in full transparency, I have a daughter that goes to KU right now. She's a junior in strategic communications and marketing, and I know how hard it is right now for students with the pandemic and all to make new friends outside of school, even heck, to make friends inside of school these days. I know, right? Because so much of it now is virtual at this point, at least for the time being. But that's one thing that's still pretty important to us is did you find a way to get some additional experience some other way? And can you talk about those stories to us? And did you get creative? If it couldn't be a full internship, can you talk about ways that you just had work experience outside of school? That's really gonna be a high mark that we're looking for. But the other thing too, and to build on what Mark and Carolyn said too, is that I think that from even the objective piece, it's, look, gang, if we're talking primarily, I'm guessing that those that are on the call here are either undergrad or maybe working in their master's program. But it's still, you may not have a lot of work experience, but you've got a lot of energy, you've got a lot of passion, you've got a lot of skill that you want to bring to the table. Those are great objectives. Just telling us that you're a hard worker, you're a team player, you're a contributor, and that those are things that we're looking for when we bring in entry level young professionals. Those are the things we're expecting for them to add to our team. We're not asking them to be process-minded folk to change processes and to change business structures, those kind of things. That will come in time. Right now, we need contributors to the team.
I want to move into a lot of formatting questions, because we get a lot of questions about, hey, what size font do they like to see? What should we use unique fonts? What about, should a resume be 1 page or 2 page? And there's a lot of debate. What would you say about that topic?
I would say right off the bat, resumes need to be 1 page. For recruiters and hiring managers, like Mark or Brian said earlier, we have a lot of resumes to go through, especially when we post those jobs for those seasonal positions. I have sometimes over 500 applications for one job. So there's a lot of people that I need to go through, and I don't have time to read a 2-page resume. So for the summer jobs, and for the things that maybe are not necessarily pertaining to the job you're applying for, it's okay to cut those off. And I even had a hard time understanding, like, okay, I can cut those internships off that maybe necessarily didn't have anything to do with what job I was applying for. So just being able to, okay, I don't need to put that I was a lifeguard for 5 years in high school. Like, that's great. And we're very happy that you were, but that doesn't help you with the job that you're applying for. And if it does, then absolutely keep it on there. But I think 1 page. And the font, as far as layout goes, consistency is key for me. So if you're applying for a job and your resume has all different types of fonts and layouts happening, that's distracting to me. So I need it to be very, if your job is over, the job titles on the left-hand side and the dates that you did it are on the right-hand side, it needs to be that way for all. And also, if you are putting the dates and you put March 2020 through July 2020, and then the next line you do the months with the numbers, that's not good. Consistency is key throughout the resume.
You'll get dinged.
You'll get
Ding ya.
dinged. I'm glad it's not just me. I'm
Nope.
really picky.
You're like, that could be a make or break right there.
Absolutely.
What about those resumes that have, oh, Mark, please go ahead.
Yeah, I would, I definitely agree with the one pager, particularly for those that are right out of school or early in their careers. You know, I would see or expect a 2-page resume for someone who is much more mature in their career and have been at it for a while, and you know, they're making their, you know, 3rd or 4th professional move, that sort of thing. Font size, 10 to 12 in terms of the font size is what I would recommend. I'm somewhat of a traditionalist, so you know, a Cabri, an Arial, a New Times Roman, kind of traditional, maybe somewhat blasé styles of font is, you know, what I would be drawn to, which could be different if you're applying for a more creative type position. But you know, that's just kind of a bias that I would have. And again, the consistency and size, and you know, if you use bold print to for your job titles, then you know, please make sure that you're consistent with the use of bold or non-bold. The consistency certainly is a key.
Quick test, gang. Once you finish your resume, hand it to your parents or the elders and ask them to read it. The 20-something eyes are a lot different than the 50-somethings eyes, and just what you might think is an easy read is not easy read at all. And so have somebody else who's not familiar with it do a quick eye check, because if it turns into an eye chart, we'll also dismiss it because we're just like, I don't have time to go get my magnifying glass and read this document.
That's a great point, Brian. I think that's also something important to note. What you see is maybe not easily interpreted by somebody else. So always have somebody else look at your resume, because there's so many times that we'll have training camp interns that do a resume class there, and I think it's great. But they do send it to us sometimes just for us to give a second round of feedback. And kind of like what Brian said, there's somebody else is always going to see something that you may not have seen. So it's always a good idea to have somebody look at it.
University Career Center, we will offer any student that wants to come to review their resume, make an appointment. We will look at that. We also have a resume Dropbox that you could submit it and have somebody look at that for just basic overall view of it, checking for grammar and spelling and so forth. So thank you for putting that plug in. It's so important. I had a student that turned in a resume for a graduate position that said detailed oriented at the very beginning opening, and it was spelled incorrectly.
Whoops.
So didn't go over well. That one didn't get looked at. So I'm glad to hear you say that. Howard, you said there was a student question.
Yeah, a few students who are here are working on their resumes, messaging me individually saying this is great. And a few of them are applying not for full-time positions, but for internships. And a couple questions came up that are there different rules for internships? And the answer may be simply no, you know, all applies. Or different processes by which an organization might review internships versus resumes submitted for a full-time job. So internships, anyone, go.
My thought on it is that for the most part, the same rules apply. The only thing that comes to mind is that education is maybe going to be a little more important for an internship than actual work experience. So if my resume for a job, let's say, has education towards the bottom, not to say that it should be towards the bottom. We can talk about that here in a minute, but certainly for someone applying for an internship, a lot of that, the employer is looking for people primarily with certain academic backgrounds for their opening internship positions. So I would emphasize that in the resume, but everything else, the consistency, the font size, have someone else read it, all of those things certainly also apply as well.
Carolyn, Brian, anything to add to that?
No, I mean, I think that was well said. We, like I had mentioned earlier, we do have a seasonal assistant, which is essentially our internship program that we do post for. And we understand that a lot of times students maybe had to work through college, or they didn't get the opportunity to have internships like some students may have. So it's important just to build on those experiences that you did have, whether it's a class project or it's a work function or a work job that you had. Just making sure that you're highlighting all of the things that could highlight why you're the ideal candidate. But no, I think that we look at them pretty similarly. We do allow our hiring managers, who would be the supervisor for these positions, to review them as well, just because they're the ones who really know exactly what they're looking for. So a lot of times it's also confusing where candidates don't know who's reviewing the resume, right? Like obviously HR is the one collecting them. However, we allow our hiring managers to have access to those resumes just so they're able to also kind of give feedback and say, hey, you know what, I saw this resume come across. I'd really like to speak with this person. We like them to be involved in the program, in the process as well. So sometimes you don't always know that. So just making sure that you are kind of covering all of your bases and know what you're applying for.
That's terrific. Thank you. Thank you.
And
Brian.
Howard, to add to that, I guess from on the design side of things, I guess for a creative internship, this is where that extra page, that PDF is going to come in. And that's where we are expecting to see the visual. And that is where, from a creative standpoint, it also is another make or break, because again, we're scanning those as quickly as we probably are the resumes. If we've got literally, 100 plus to go through, we're looking for that thing that's going to catch our attention. Again, in the simple, well-designed document or page. Again, we're not looking for multiple pages here. That PDF needs to be a one-pager, even though it may still be, a visual representation of your abilities. And guys, I'm speaking just to let you know. Again, I told you I've been in the consulting world for over 30 years. It's no different for me. I tell students every day, I do the same thing they do. I got to go out and get the next job for my firm, just like you've got to go get the job for yourself. And so we have the same criteria that applies to us as it applies to you, right? I have to have my one-page PDF always ready to go for when people say, can you send me some quick information? That means I want a one-pager. When they say, I want to go in depth, I want to have another phone call, then I need to be ready for the long, that's where I can have my multi-PDF presentation or my digital portfolio ready to go. I have to have my website, as current as possible to have them. If they want to go find me and find our stuff their way, then that has to be ready to go. If they go searching for me and I'm not ready for them to do that, then it'll probably break the link. So again, I'm speaking more to the creative opportunities there, but all those things need to be in place because they will go looking for you on LinkedIn. They will go see what they can find about your skills with the hopes that it all ties back to, in the resume, why it's critical to this conversation is kind of the centerpiece. It's kind of it still is the flag pin at the center.
This is terrific. And I've actually got, Kim, we've got two more questions coming.
Please.
On the student side, but that's outstanding. And Brian, I'll let you know that we do have some folks that are more on the design, architecture, creative side who are on this call. So greatly appreciate that perspective as well. Okay, so there's two questions. And Brian, you kind of hit it a little bit with mentioning LinkedIn. Question just being from a hiring perspective, do you go and check folks' social media accounts? When you get to a certain spot with your hiring, and how does that play into, if at all, what your hiring decisions? That's one. Second question is, some of the students, and this was also kind of hinted at earlier, Mark, I think maybe you mentioned this, some of the students missed out on professional experiences. We do know people had, because of COVID, internships revoked, things like that. The question is, does mentioning that in an application, is it worthwhile, or does it have the potential to come off not the right way? With maybe too much privilege is how the asker put it in the chat. So I'll leave it there. Like, social media
Great question.
and mentioning COVID at all when folks feel like their resume may not be to a space because they lost out on some opportunities due to the pandemic.
I'll start off, and I would say that on social media, for myself, I would never try to go to the effort to look somebody up in social media that I was considering for a position. Having said that, there are a lot of people that would. And so my advice would be to be mindful of the kind of things that are public in social media. And back to Brian's point about your brand, it's just kind of difficult to ignore. So even though I personally wouldn't do it, I know there's a lot of other people that would, and I would be mindful of that. And kind of somewhat along on the lines, and hopefully this is not too basics, but I have, when it comes to your personal information on a resume, in an email address, as an example, it should be a professional email address. It shouldn't be, funguy21@hotmail.com. And you'd be surprised the kind of email addresses that I've seen on a resume. So it's not social media, but yet it still is one of those things that says something about you. And as far as an internship that maybe went awry or got canceled, for me, I don't know that would be of any value to see that on a resume. So I would personally suggest you stay clear from that. But
I would
open to
agree.
other thoughts.
I would agree. I want to go back to the social media question because I think that's super important, especially now. Everyone has social media. You have Snapchat, you have Instagram, you have TikTok, I'm sure there's thousands of things I don't know about, Facebook. But I personally do not go and look at people's social medias. I think kind of what you do on your own time is your business. But I do tell my interns, I do tell our staff, I do tell full-time hires, you are a direct reflection of the Kansas City Chiefs. So whatever it is you're doing on your social media platform, you need to remember that. And I will be completely transparent. There have been staff issues with people who are not reflecting the organization in the maybe correct light. So that is something that if it comes to our attention, it is something that will be addressed. But it's very clear on what our expectations are. And it's up to the hire, the employee, the candidate to decide what they're going to do, what's more important to them.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe there are actual rules in place for hiring practices for organizations not to go out and search your social media sites. But as Mark said, be mindful because that's the rule doesn't mean they aren't. Again, the one that typically stays in the safe zone is LinkedIn. That's considered your professional path of communication. So that's one you definitely want to have matched up to your resume, because in many cases, people will just treat that as your resume and say, well, that's okay. I'm on your LinkedIn now. I see it here. You don't have to send it to me, or vice versa. So those two things should be in correlation. Your more traditional resume and print should equal that which is is on LinkedIn, and keep those current and coincide with one another. Would you guys agree with that?
Absolutely. Yep.
The interesting thing about the internship, I could see where that could be a conundrum because congratulations to those that, were able to obtain those. And unfortunately, however, though, due to COVID, may have not gotten that opportunity. There may be some other ways to work that. It's possible that they might write you a reference on why they selected you as an intern. And even though you guys didn't have an opportunity to actually engage, you did make the selection process. So maybe there's a way for them to give you a recommendation just to say that we were, honored to have so-and-so, I'm seeing Paige Miller's name here. We were honored to have Paige. She was planning to join us due to pandemic. That wasn't the case, but we did like her, her skills for certain reasons. They might give a little shout out to you, which could be of benefit to you downstream.
I think that's a great idea, Brian. That's a really good idea.
I
So
agree.
not put it on your resume, but maybe include it as a reference or a reference letter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And
excellent.
I mean, I would know, only speaking for my hiring managers, I absolutely think they would be more than happy to do that. That's a quick, easy ask. And, obviously COVID was something that nobody could control. So if it takes, a couple minutes to explain why we selected that person, I think that's a great idea.
Because they certainly would have loved to have had that opportunity, right? Both parties would have liked to have engaged because you guys went the distance on that. So I'm sure most employers would be willing to offer something in return if they weren't able to offer the internship in full.
That's a great idea.
Howard, are there any other questions?
Two more.
Good.
They're starting to roll in now. So that's terrific. So here's the first one. We'll do one at a time this time. What about including, this is from a student, what about including experiences with political campaigns and organizations that might be potentially divisive? The student asking the question recognizes that it may vary field to field, but it's something they're wondering about.
Great question.
That's a tricky one, right? Obviously, in today's world, I think obviously if you're going, if you're trying to get a job in the White House, with the current administration, then absolutely. But I think again, I'd go back to Mark. Being mindful of what you're doing. Is there an importance to what you're trying to accomplish here? If it was the Young Republicans Club or Young Democrats Club, and you had leadership skills, then maybe it isn't so much about the organization as much as it is about your ability to participate and lead and elevate that, right? But if you make it a political statement, then you got probably a 50-50 chance it's going to go hot or cold on you, right? Based upon the division we have in the U.S. today, not to get political, but that, so again, you have to be mindful. And just because, I always say this about design as a whole too, just because it's important to you or you think it's important to you doesn't necessarily mean it's important to your audience. And the same thing goes for, a product we're designing. Just because I like it doesn't mean, thousands of others are going to like it. We have to design it for them, not for us as much. In that sense, because you really are trying to get recognized as something that's of value to them. And once you get the opportunity, then you can showcase how crucial and special you really are.
Yeah,
So-
my thought is if the intention to share that is to communicate something about your political beliefs, then no. But if the intention is to show skills that you developed or accomplishments that you had or teamwork, problem solving, the type of things that translates to the position that you're applying for, then yes.
So for instance, Mark, if you have an internship at a political party and you did all kinds of things, you would include that in experience, but maybe think twice about putting it in extracurricular activity of just listing it.
Yes.
Possibly.
Yeah, I would agree
Okay.
with that.
Yeah. Great answers. Howard, there was another one.
Yeah, the second question I think maybe has a quick answer, but it sounds like one of our students that's attending today had an internship cut short rather than rescinded. It didn't go the whole way through, and was wondering if some of the advice that you gave earlier, Brian, that I think you originally brought up about maybe having your employer or the company that was doing your internship ask them for a statement on why they hired you in the first place. I'm assuming that that would apply even in this situation as well for the student who asked it.
I think so. I think it applies, but also I think if they served time at this organization and they did work and they did have experiences, I absolutely think that you can put that on your resume. But it also doesn't hurt to attach that letter explaining kind of what happened. Obviously, COVID, there's a lot of understanding in the hiring field for that right now, because a lot of it was out of everyone's control. So I definitely think it's important to still ask for that letter. But if you put in the time there, I absolutely think you can put it on your resume, whether it was cut short or not.
I
Yeah,
agree.
guys. Yeah, in fact, I think, sorry, Mark, I was thinking that, in today's world, if you got a 1-week internship with an organization,
Yeah.
that may be something to celebrate.
Yeah.
Like I said, as long as it's truthful and you engaged and you can tell how it went down and why, it's going to be something to have a conversation around. Remember, the other thing we're looking for is what can we have a conversation with you about? What can you tell us about you? So if we do get a chance to speak with you, where can we go? Now, this is interesting. I see here you have this that, occurred, and that's where the conversation is going to begin, and it's going to blossom from there. So yeah, it may not be about duration or length. It may be about the opportunity and exposure.
I agree with Carolyn and Brian.
Another question is rolled in, and this goes back to something, Mark, I think you brought up originally. I'm taking notes too, and about the importance of teamwork and working as part of a group, having that represented authentically on your resume. So students asking, does that include group projects at KU? So it sounds like, and I teach on campus, so sometimes you assign your students group projects or what have you. For somebody that's just starting to build out a resume, would that be something for like an entry-level position you'd like to see them talking about working as part of a team or a group on a group project? And where might that show up? Is that in experiences? Is that some detail under education or what have you? So I think the students just saying, in American Studies or journalism or the B School, I worked as part of a group for this 300 level class. Is that something that should go on there?
I say absolutely yes, particularly if you are thin in the actual work experience realm and you're trying to emphasize from an experience standpoint. It's definitely should be on a resume and definitely applicable, and I would suggest it be under the experience portion and talk about it. How a team or a group of how many people and what specifically was the project and what was your part of that. Help bring it to life to the employer so they have a feel for what you did in that situation. I would definitely have it on a resume.
I had a student that asked me, should I put my bartending job on a resume?
Carolyn wants to say something.
Silence.
Yeah, I didn't hit the mute button. Well, I'm going to say yes.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
first of all, the old fashioned is the official drink at Into Innovation. So if you know how to make an old fashioned, I'm happy to hear from you. But honestly, what it says there is that you have social skills, that you can engage with the public, you can multitask, you can remember recipes and processes, so start extracting the things that apply to that which you will do in a different opportunity. Those things can very much roll up as, oh, okay. And not to mention, I could really have a conversation with you about it. It's a great opportunity to talk about the stories that go with it.
Absolutely. I would agree.
Yeah, I would agree too. It's obviously what's more important than the actual job title It's what did you do? What did you learn? What skills were developed as a bartender?
This is a really good question that a student asked. He's moving to New York and he wants to do enter the entertainment industry after COVID. And he's been told that if he has a residence, an address on his resume that's other than the New York area, it might hurt them because they won't be able to bring him in right away or so forth. What are your thoughts on that? And what are your thoughts on actually putting a physical address anymore on a resume?
I say no physical address on a resume anymore. I think you can put where you're located. Like for me, for example, I have the little pin emoji on my resume and it has Kansas City, Kansas. But they don't have my address on it.
I would agree. And there's certainly a bias if you're in New York and you get a resume from somebody in Lawrence, Kansas. Yeah, I would avoid it.
Great.
It's so strange because back in my day, that was the number one thing you put at the top was your home address.
Yeah.
But now, my son just graduated from KU a year ago. He has no real address. He's been floating ever since. He's got a full-time job out of San Francisco, but he's lived at like 4 different places now since he graduated. And that's kind of the people, that expectation now that you kind of maybe you may be drifting in that sense from a standpoint of a physical home base.
Howard, do we have any other other questions?
In fact, we just had one come in and I was going to ask a question about this anyway. So Juan, thank you for this question. Do cover letters matter? And if so, what would you emphasize in a cover letter?
Cover letters, I think, absolutely matter. A lot of companies now, I'm learning, aren't requiring you to submit a cover letter. However, I think if the company is giving you the opportunity or the option, I think you absolutely should take it. Kind of similar to your resume, this is another chance for you to display, are you a good writer? Or can you communicate efficiently and effectively? Because those, for personal reasons, like if I'm hiring somebody as an HR manager for my department, you absolutely have to know how to write. Your grammar has to be on point. There can't be any errors in that. The list goes on because you're, again, a direct reflection of your organization. So absolutely, if you have another opportunity just to kind of shine a little bit more, I think you should take it.
I agree.
I think what's funny is they call them cover letters, but I'll typically read the resume first. If I like the resume, I'll go back and read the cover letter, and the cover letter will kind of make or break which stack you go to. So I love cover letters, and it tells me I can read your creativeness, I can read your passion, I can read your story, and that gives you an opportunity. But now I'm having a dialogue with what you crafted there versus the formality of your resume. But it's not necessarily the first thing I read. It's probably the last thing I read.
Interesting. Howard, any other questions? Okay. I want to, oh, you're on mute, Howard.
One just came in as I said
Okay.
no, and then yes. Let's see. It says, I have my job titles on my resume in caps lock. And I'm wondering if that's hurting, helping, not affecting my chances at all. What do you bold or what do you put in caps lock versus not in capitals?
It's a great question. I personally, for me, my eyes are going to go directly to where you're working and your job title. So I think it's important to have those two things standing out. But somebody actually just sent a chat and said, should you write a new cover letter for each job? And the answer is absolutely yes. I think that the cover letter, again, should be just specifically for that job that you're applying for, because one, that shows that you're detail oriented, you're focusing on the things that we're looking for this position. And that's another chance for you to highlight whether or not you're a good candidate. So absolutely a brand new cover letter. And I will tell a cringing story for how many jobs we post at a time, especially for the seasonal jobs. It's incredible to me how many times people will apply for multiple jobs, and that's fine. you're either qualified or you're not for the job. So I think that if you copy and paste and you give me the same cover letter for each job when they're different jobs, I see that. Our hiring managers see that. And Mark and Brian are shaking their heads, yes, because this is your one chance. This is your one chance to shine. So take the extra 15 minutes and write a different cover letter for the HR job versus the corporate partnerships job. So really kind of take that seriously. I think it's your
We'll
one
call
shot.
it out in a heartbeat, and
Yep.
you'll get dinged for it.
Yep.
And especially, please know that don't send me the cover letter to the other firm you were trying to send it to. That's the other thing.
Yes.
Yeah, and the whole copy and paste thing, it's essential tool and skill to develop. And it's silly not to, but
Right.
at the same time, there becomes an added responsibility in your proofreading when you do it. I know we have all done embarrassing things using copy and paste, be it in emails or more formal documents. So it's critical. Comes even more critical to proofread when you do copy and paste.
Just a note on the caps lock thing, due to Twitter and other social media outlets, right? Caps lock means something different now than it did a ways back.
Yeah.
Do you need to scream it at us? Probably not. That's kind of what I think caps lock means in today's world. But again, if you don't have the graphic design skills, there's a wonderful graphic design department there at KU. Go ask a graphic design student to help you out. You got plenty of resources all around. But more importantly, I guess, I learned early days of my design education at KU, right? Pick one, right? Do I need it in caps lock and bold? No. If there's a reason it's going to be in caps lock, then okay. But I think you've done enough. No need to overstep the boundaries there.
Howard, anything else?
Not just at this second, no.
We have a few minutes. I want to be respectful of time, but how about, why don't you tell us, what is your biggest pet peeve? If you had to pick something, I know, Caroline, when you and I were talking, you said, oh gosh, I don't like it when they put a picture on there, or you had mentioned a few things. So
yeah.
What is your biggest pet peeve that's gonna, like you said, Brian, get the ding?
I'll jump on first. I think that if you put "you assisted with" for every single line underneath the job, that drives me crazy, because what does that mean? What does that mean, you assisted with? There are thousands of other words that you could use to describe your experience or your time there. So find a synonym, find another way to say assisted with, because if I see that assisted with all the way down a resume, I'm over it. I'm moving on to the next one, because there's other people who have used different words in different ways to say assisted with. So
And
if anyone
don't
has
substitute
resume
it with
questions-
responsible for, right?
correct. There's just different ways to say it. I'm glad that you assisted with it, but show me, how did you do that? Tell me differently, because I don't want to see that you assisted with it.
Or responsible for.
Brian and Mark, do you have any feedback?
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I agree. And there's resources out there where you can go in and you can find words not to use in a resume and suggested words to use, the use of active verbs and examples of those. There's lots of tools and resources for you to think about and use in putting together a resume. For my pet peeves, probably just real basic, and that's just spelling. Misspelling the name of the company you're applying to or the position that you're applying to. Just in general, that's just, wow, you just can't do that.
No, you will get removed
Yeah.
immediately. In today's world, there's no excuse, right, for that. And with all the accessibility you have with resources on campus and online, this is something that really should shine. And believe it or not, you have to remember you're in competition with a lot of other people, and there is other people out there who are shining, and you need to know that you're shining too. I said shiny earlier. I didn't mean that. I got something maybe using my different descriptions there, but make sure that you really come off the way you want to come off. And I know as students, you're feeling very pressured for a lot of things that you have responsibilities for, but remember, this is the culmination of all that you've accomplished in your lifetime to that point. And it really is the description of who you are and who you want to be, and let it shine in that sense, and it'll come out. But it's going to take a lot of complication on your part to get that right, so the simple message can get to us and we go, this is an easy call, right? You stood out so much from beyond, because there's a lot of crud in the system. Trust me, there's a lot of that we're just going to ditch. You can read it so quickly and it just goes away. But you get down to those handfuls that you're like, okay, now it's getting really interesting. And now those things really start mattering. But I'd say probably my biggest pet peeve is caps locks. Yeah, I would guess that would be it. No, just kidding.
Anything else?
There is a note just came in. Everyone, panel members, would you mind if we connect with you or follow you on LinkedIn?
Not a bit.
Away.
You're welcome to.
Natalie, I'll also mention and pop in the chat here, and this is how I got to meet Mark, I guess, virtually, at least the first time, is if you're not on KU Mentoring, it's another great place to network. And network, we describe it sometimes as a Jayhawk LinkedIn. So there's automatic connection there because all of the alumni and students there are KU affiliated. So Natalie, just another great place to be is on KU Mentoring, and I will put that link in the chat. Students, running near the end of time, so if you do have questions, pop them in the chat or jump in before Kim gets to kind of
Last call.
and
Last call.
and final thoughts. And
Howard,
I'll
if I can add just a real
Please.
quick adder there, we didn't talk much about leadership organizations that you belong to in the industrial design world, the IDSA, Industrial Designers Society of America. I've been a member of IDSA since KU and never left the organization. That's an easy one for you to show that you want to be associated with the people you want to be associated with, and show that you not only a member, but that you maybe held an office or a position with it. Those are easy things to do, and those organizations will happily hand out titles if you say, how can I help? And we'll recognize that, because again, we're looking for anything that says, do these people want to be in the game? So those things, I know on my side, matter a lot to me.
Any other closing thoughts?
I just can't, the Super Bowl can't get here fast enough. So whatever we need to do to,
Listen, I need a few more days, Brian. I need time to slow down.
You could use another week, I'm sure, but we're ready for next weekend.
I know, I am as well. But yes, it's a crazy time, and I'm ready for another Super Bowl ring. That's what I'm ready for.
That's exciting.
Yes. One thing that is kind of coming to me as we're closing out, and I'm thinking about for me a year ago, January, I'm not sure I'd ever participated in a Zoom call. And there's a lot of other people like myself that can say that. And where I'm going with this is that, this has been a different experience for all of us. And when you develop your skills and your abilities and putting your resume together, don't be shy in talking about that you have had experience hosting a network call or participating in a call, because that's going to be something that organizations are going to be looking to and looking for people with those experience and skills even more so going forward. Regardless what the final outcome is of our current pandemic, I think it's something that's going to live with us, going forward. So, think about that as well, especially if you're a little bit low on the work experience and you're looking for opportunities to highlight accomplishments and experience that you've had. don't be afraid to sometimes state the obvious.
Excellent.
I have one more closing thought. By the way, the LinkedIn requests are flying in, so everyone get ready. But I will say that attending these things are great, and I think it's amazing that KU is providing this opportunity. And for those who are taking advantage of it, I think that you're doing a great thing and making a great decision for yourself. So number one, don't be afraid to ask for help. I think that, as Kim mentioned, there is a place for you to go have your resume reviewed. It never hurts to ask for help. I know sometimes I have a really hard time just, saying, okay, I need help, and delegating to my coordinators. They would tell you that I struggle with that sometimes. But another thing also, don't be afraid to reach out and make that connection. So you're making that connection on LinkedIn, and sometimes, personally, myself speaking, I don't have time to respond to every single one, but you never know unless you try. And instead of just the generic question of like, can we connect? Why do you want to connect? Are you a KU grad? Or did you see something on my LinkedIn profile that is standing out to you that you can kind of connect with? And another thing, it always amazes me how many people don't take advantage of those connections. You're connected for a reason. So if you need something, you need help, you want somebody to look at your resume, or you need some mentoring advice, it never hurts to reach out. The worst that can happen is the answer is no, or I don't have time. During season, I have no time. So postseason is better to ask for those things. But just never hurts to ask. So never be afraid to put yourself out there, and push yourself a little bit further.
Good advice. Okay. Well, I want to thank each and every one of the panelists. Thank you. You were more than incredible. It was just great to hear your advice, and I know the students appreciated it very much. Thank you, students, for joining us. Thank you, Howard, for beautifully managing that chat line. I can't do both at the same time. So thank you for
That's
doing
something
that.
I've learned, Mark, is when you do these events, you have to have two moderators.
You
on
do.
top.
You really do. I can't multitask on Zoom, I don't think. But
And a lot of thanks
just
coming in
to
and
remind you students that we have more live programs that are coming up tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. It's how to create a resume using Word, tips and techniques, so you don't have to use those, what am I trying, the templates.
keywords?
That's what I'm looking for. So you don't have to use templates. So come and join us tomorrow. If you haven't signed up to have a resume review appointment, please do so via our office. And then also we'll be doing some mock interviews with prospective employers for next week. So if you haven't signed up, please do so. It's a great opportunity to put your all your hard work
That's
to
a really
test.
good opportunity. You should definitely take advantage of mock interviews.
Thank you for that plug. That's awesome. Okay.
She did not have to use